Welcome to the Metta Life Podcast. I'm your host, Laura. Come with me on a journey to a healthy life. On today's episode, Martyna and I talk about all things yoga. Martyna is a medical doctor. She's also a health and fitness lifestyle advisor and a yoga teacher. Since 2013, she has been working in different medical settings, including operation theater, intensive care unit, and other departments in Switzerland and in Poland. She also teaches yoga, and she is currently a country representative of the European Lifestyle Medicine Organization for Switzerland. Martyna, what is yoga?
So first of all, I'm very happy to be here again. And yes, it's a very big question. And I would say that's not any more straightforward answer. So first and foremost, we need to remember about its roots. And originally, it derives from India, and it's a big philosophical system. And it has many limbs to it. It means like the parts to it and branches, and it's like a spiritual path for many. Then the one that it's mainly the yoga perception that we have here in the West, or that it's being practiced, it actually concentrates mainly on only a few aspects of it, and then and from teacher to teacher it also changes. So it's the one that we know the most is the asanas, so basically the physical part of it. So the physical practice, or the asana, we can translate it as a posture that are being done during yoga practice. Then some teachers also teach meditation as part of teaching of yoga. And then quite often also pranayama, which is learning the breathing techniques. And so these three, I would say, are most common here in the West.
A lot of people teach meditation as part of their yoga practice, but I often have the feeling here in the West that it's more pranayama or like relaxation exercises. Is it possible, or am I mistaken?
Yes, I would say, again, so same as yoga means a bit something different to everyone, same meditation. So what some understand as meditation, like let's say my understanding would be that it's just simple relaxation technique or concentration technique. But it's often being introduced as meditation, and maybe to this person that's how they perceive meditation as well. So, but yes, I would say to what I teach, for example, like for me, I make a very clear distinction in my practice and in my life between the meditation and relaxation concentration techniques. So what I actually teach is asana, so the postures and the physical aspect, and also to some extent simple breathing techniques and then the relaxation concentration. But to me, in my the meditation practice, it goes further than that. So for this, if someone is interested in meditation, my advice always is to do a 10-day Vipassana course.
Which is where we met, by the way.
That's where we met. And so Vipassana is the practice that's my meditation practice. And that's something you cannot learn just, like doing 5 or 10 minutes a day. You actually need this 10 days introduction course, which is, it's also very pure. It's free of charge, and it's donation based.
So a class with you, how does it look like? What does it entail? And what do you teach? Because I sometimes feel that there are as many forms of yoga as there are teachers.
Yes.
So what are the main forms of yoga that can be practiced, and what do you teach?
Yes. So basically yoga became like a huge, only these physical, like let's say the asanas even themselves. So as we already said, there are many different branches of yoga. One of them is asana, so the physical postures. But even here, especially in the West, then there's tons of different styles. So because you asked about the styles, so they are more dynamic, more more restorative, more stretching focused, and then sometimes it goes to like some very, to me maybe it's a judgment, but some very, very far-fetched or yoga with beer, and which is really
with beer,
or wine, which is
what?
Yeah,
okay.
I've seen the advertisement. I never done it, but I'm
okay. I need to plea, guilty. I am dreaming of doing a yoga with goats class one day.
That might be very interesting, but it's kind of far from its origin.
Obviously.
But that's how it is. Also, everything evolves somehow, and so the word yoga can be very confusing. But you ask about what I teach. So to me, what I concentrate on is the also health aspect of yoga. So especially with the lifestyle medicine background, medical background in general, and especially lifestyle medicine. To me, this aspect is very important. So I take it as an opportunity to teach my students about their body to start with, like to rebuild this connection. It's very famous now, this mind-body connection that everyone talks about. But actually, that's super interesting, like to be able to connect the two and actually feel your body. And we often say in yoga, like that it's important to learn to hear your body whisper before it has to shout. So before you actually get to the point that and shouting would be like in pain or developing some disease. So for me, this is very, very important aspect. So I concentrate very much on these. And then for years of my own practice, I often practiced a lot with the Iyengar teachers. Iyengar was a person. Now he passed away a few years, more than a few years ago. And then he developed something that's now called the Iyengar yoga. So I don't teach pure Iyengar yoga, but I've learned a lot from it. And then it's very much like it's very, very precision based type of yoga. So every detail counts. So I learned from a lot from this, but then I added some elements, especially based on the anatomy, physiology. In some aspects, I was feeling that my understanding was, maybe it changed now, that some aspects sometimes, from anatomical point of view, I felt that it needed some adjustments. So in these cases, I did that. And then also I work mainly one-to-one, because again, every person is different, so they would need different practice. So I sometimes do also events and group events, but usually I like to work one-on-one because every person would need something different depending on their body composition, depending on their body type, depending on their mind type as well. So some people, they really might need like intense practice, at least at the beginning, to get their mind to the point that it can let go. Yeah. Because there's so much going on in their mind that that it has to be intense on the physical level, so they can switch off the thinking and actually come back to their body. And then building from this, so from newly grabbed attention back to the body thanks to some intensity, we can go by the end of even the same class to more subtle things, finishing with some relaxation in the end. And then they actually able to relax. Some other people, they would need a more working like more gently, and then again, depending on their physical condition as well. So some simply because of the physical condition they have, they might need just very, very gentle practice. Or then pregnant women, then it's also again a different topic. So then it's really, really depends on the person, like the exact then practice that we do.
I always feel like when I practice yoga that I work towards aligning not just my physical body, but also my physical body with who I am and my mind and my soul, everything together. And what I love, because I fell in love with Iyengar many years ago, and what I loved with this technique is that it really focuses on the alignment between the right side and the left side of your body. And what I loved with you, because I had the pleasure of taking a few classes with you, more than a few by now, was the fact that we really worked from the ground upwards. So we focused on every detail of the foot and how you place your foot and your toes. And I love this. And it has made a real difference in my day-to-day life. And now when I walk, I think about Martyna. I'm like, oh, how am I placing my foot? And practicing yoga for most of my life now, which is bizarre to say, I'm not that old, but for most of my life, I feel like it has changed the way I perceive my physical body in the world. Yeah. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To me, also my personal journey, it was more or less similar. So I started practicing when I was 16, and I remember it like completely changed me as a person. So first came my yoga practice, and then thanks to that, then my meditation practice, and both they had a huge impact. But the first one, 3 years before meditation, I started with yoga, and straight away it was also Iyengar teachers, and it had a very, very profound impact as well, because I from a very shy and then closed and a bit lost teenager that I was, with tendency to follow, or like as many teenagers do, like follow everyone around, like I really found grounding, I would say, within myself. And it was surprising, because from the outside it looks like any other physical activity sometimes to some, but there was something like very profound about this alignment, as you say, of the mind and body, that it felt like the opening of some kind of new universe to some extent, and especially like growing this inner strength or this inner connection with oneself, that you really have this time with yourself, that you do all these poses, but at the same time you're really like focused to, like, you try to be as present as you can in all different parts, body parts, and then to some extent control them. You might realize for the first time that you're actually not able to control many of them. And then little by little, if the some like the simplest one is that, that most of us, because of shoes and all, we lose this capability of managing our toes. So usually the first thing I do, the first class, is like I'm like asking to stretch and spread the toes, and most of us cannot do it the first time. And then, but what is fascinating is like little by little, like this connection gets reestablished, and then we actually gain back the control.
Okay, I know no one can see this because it's underneath the table, but right now I'm stretching my toes and it feels great.
Yeah, everyone should do it at home. So like just the simple exercise of trying to stretch and spread, like same as with stretch and spread the fingers, to do the same thing with the toes. And then normally the first time, not normally, but many times, often because of the years of shoes wearing, the toes, they won't move at the beginning, and then many people are really surprised because they never tried. So like it's super weird to realize that there is some body parts that are completely asleep, and yet having the good control of our feet impacts then all the rest of the body, and also the stability in the long run as well, which is super important. So I like, as you said, I like to work from bottom up, and usually I stay quite some time on the feet work. At the beginning, it's like creating the foundations. When we have the foundations, we can go further. But the first classes that I have with my students, it's building these foundations. And I would say there are many important aspects, but like two crucial. It's the work of the feet. And second one, not so much activity, but the movement of the pelvis. So because we often forget in our practice, like we are so concentrated on everything, we are concentrated on the goal. So let's say in forward bends, like usual thinking, and especially it's like, I just want to go down and put the feet down on the floor, whatever, or the head to the knees. But then we forget how to get there. So often what is happening, because there's lack of movement somewhere, so we compensate somewhere else. Yeah. So like the part that is not moving correctly is being compensated by the part that has more mobility, but what it leads to in the long run, it's developing some injury most often, especially in forward bend. Common mistake that I see in forward bend is, rather than rotating the pelvis to the front, but because also the hamstrings or the leg muscles that limit this movement, they attach to the pelvis. So basically, if they are short, they don't allow the pelvis to rotate properly to the front. So what we do, we just use the spine to keep flexing. And then that's how many people get actually injured if they repeat it, or if they do it like too intensely in one go. So that's why it's much more that's why I usually don't ask people to put the hands on the floor at the beginning, even if they can. I ask them to keep the hands on the pelvis, so they keep rotating the pelvis as far as they can. And that's it. They just concentrate on the actual movement you want to do, rather than and at the same time, it's the mind work. So we concentrate on the journey and not on the final goal. So not about where we put the hands, doesn't matter. What's important is how we get there.
Yeah. Speaking about injuries, what are the contraindications for practicing yoga? Who can't do yoga? Who should consider twice doing yoga? And who should be careful with whom they practice?
Everyone should be careful with whom they practice from experience,
Yeah.
because I got some injuries from my yoga practice, especially when I was younger. And surprisingly, young people, these are the ones who are most prone to injuries because they don't, flexible, because we don't listen, because we think we can, because we don't have much pain, and we push. And we are also pushed sometimes. So that was my case. So that's why I'm saying it's important to be careful with whom you practice, because sometimes there are, fortunately, teachers who actually push you in the poses. Like you should, of course, like some manual corrections, they have their place when you teach, but most of the time, there are some exceptions. Most of the time, it's like just guiding the student so he understands the movement rather than pushing them so they can get there. Because that's how I got injured, for example. So I'm super careful about that. So yes, we always should be careful. If something doesn't feel right, then it means it's not right. Even with you are your final and the most important teacher. So if your body tells you it's not right for me, whatever your teacher tells you doesn't matter. You don't do it. And then and if the situation repeats itself, it might be a good idea to maybe check another teacher. Then who should not do yoga? Again, in responsible hands. I think anyone can do yoga. So
whether you're pregnant, whether you have some physical handicaps.
Yes. So basically, I mean, yes and no. So yes, everyone can do. We many times the teachers say that the only prerequisite is to be able to breathe. As long as you breathe, you're fine. You can practice, but then what you might need is modification of your practice.
Yeah.
So you don't. Generally, you don't have contraindication to yoga as a whole, but you might have contraindications to many of the yoga poses. That's why, again, we come back. It's important to go to the teacher who is aware of these contraindications and who states them, because some students might not know. For example, if you have glaucoma or high blood pressure, you should avoid the upside down positions, and then glaucoma, again, it depends on the type of glaucoma, but if you have glaucoma, you should check with your ophthalmologist, and then also the teacher should remember to say whenever he does, especially in the setting of group classes, when they not necessarily know that so well their students, or in private class, during the initial consultation, they should check certain conditions. One of them is glaucoma and high blood pressure. In these cases, they should not do They should not do upside down poses. Mm-hmm. Most of them, even supposedly, which look innocent. So headstand, obviously, it's
a big no-no.
It's a big no-no. But even just legs up the wall.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
For glaucoma, yes.
Oh.
There was a study which showed that it significantly made the intraocular pressure grow. So this is not obvious at all. So you see, okay, and even often if someone does not headstand, it's given this pose instead. But that's not a great choice.
Okay.
So these kind of issues, then pregnant women, of course, they have. I know now by even more. I mean, I taught pregnant yoga even more now. I having my own personal experience. It even deepens my understanding why certain indications, contraindications are there, but there are also many of them, including avoiding the intense back bends.
Yeah.
But even gentle back bends, one has to be careful with. Also avoiding deep forward bends, twists. Some gentle twists are okay, open twists are okay, but not closed ones. So there's tons and tons of little details that there need to be known. So it can be, yoga on one hand, it can be have many benefits, like both to pregnant patients or any other, or pregnant students or any other student with any physical condition. But then we have to be aware of potential risks, because it can also be very dangerous, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is still a physical activity. And every physical activity, it entails a certain amount of risks.
And yoga, in certain forms of yoga, they also the danger is even bigger because of the extreme, the intensity or how extreme certain poses are that we do. So let's say fitness classes, they have their own risks, but most of the time you don't stand in your hand, you don't go upside down. It can bring certain risks if you have the cardiovascular problems, but you would know. Before. Here we have certain poses, they're very, very, especially very intense twists. So again, twists are good, and the spine likes the twist, but not extreme ones. So again, if someone has a spine problem and back problem, the twist, the rotation, basically we search for all kind of movements in the spine, so to help the imbibition process, which is feeding our discs, so they stay nice and plumpy and well nourished. So yoga can be super beneficial because we have all types of movement in all directions when it comes to the spine, but then it can be detrimental if we go too far.
Yeah.
So again, it really depends.
So at what time can anyone start doing yoga, and at what time should anyone stop doing yoga? And is there a certain age?
I don't stopping, I don't think so. I mean, the most famous, not the eldest living now, she passed away at the age of 100 something. Wow. The Tao Porchen Lynch, she's a very inspiring woman. Unfortunately, she passed away quite recently, a few years ago. So she was teaching and practicing yoga all the way until she was 100. So
that's amazing.
So you can continue again, and people more advanced in age, most of the time they need even more careful assessment.
Yes,
because they might have some more issues, and even if they might have hypertension, even if they don't know they have. So I would recommend anyone who wants to start practicing yoga just to check their blood pressure. And they might because it doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
So actually, many people who suffer from high blood pressure, they don't know about it before they develop the complications of it. So actually, that can be anyone actually should check it from time to time. So the moment you decide to start your yoga practice, it can be a great moment to at the same time just check that, because it would change your practice, and then it will be also important information for you yourself. And also the people like more advanced in age, they might have some issues with osteoporosis or these kind of things. Their medical history is usually much longer.
Yeah.
So you should take more time and be more careful to assess them. Then when it comes to the lowest age, again, there is no such, but of course infants, those are mothers, their practice and like just playing with the baby. You should not forget, like the babies, they play. So the same.
Can you imagine now you're practicing baby?
Exactly. I'm not teaching kids yoga, but it exists, and then it's mainly based on play. So we don't keep them as long as in positions, and they should play and have fun with it.
That's amazing. So if there is one piece of advice with regard to yoga that you could give most of us or everyone, what would it be?
Oh my God, so many. First of all, I would say the most common misconception is that I'm not flexible enough to practice yoga.
I hear it all the time.
Exactly. So my first piece of advice would be just don't worry about it. And if that actually might be indication, it will help you with that. So that's great. Actually, the hyper flexible people, they have more issues. They are much more attracted to do yoga because it seems everything is easy for them. But the problem is it usually comes from not just from their muscles being nice and long. It comes from the ligaments that actually are hyper flexible and they can injure themselves. And those, they really, rather than going further to what they like, they should concentrate on strength. So so my piece of advice would be, don't worry if you feel you're not flexible enough. And then the second one would be very important. If you go to yoga class and you really don't like it and you're like, no, it's not for me, just don't get discouraged. Just search for another class, another teacher, because it's so big and then it can bring you so much benefits.
Yeah. So everyone should practice yoga. Just find the right teacher.
That's kind of it. And then for different person, it will be different teachers. So one teacher can be perfect for one person, but completely not for another. So just that was the case for me as well at the beginning. I remember I checked, 5 schools before I found the one that I really felt that was it.
Oh, Martyna, it has been incredible talking to you. Before we end every episode, I like to ask a few burning questions. Are you ready for them?
Yes.
Well. The first one is, what do you want most out of this life?
Okay, so I answered this one the last time I was here. So it didn't change much. So it's still I would like to work through my own work. I would like to work on my own wisdom, how big word it is, and the peace. And that would be.
What does wisdom for you mean?
Wisdom for me means growing my wisdom, my own wisdom. So being able to keep observing myself and getting to know myself, basically. That's the wisdom. And then through knowing myself, knowing the people around me and the world, hopefully, but starting with growing wisdom based on my own self-observation.
I love it. Usually we look outside when we should be looking inside.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And then complete these sentences. The world needs more.
Looking inside.
More looking inside. I agree. And I am grateful for.
Actually, almost everything I would say in my life at the moment. So very grateful for my partner and the growing baby and my family and the place I live and my amazing friends and the teaching and working with people, all of it.
Oh. And now the very last question of the interview. If there was one thing I could cook for you, what would it be today?
So I remember last time I already picked the soup, miso soup. So this time would have to be a dessert. So let's say this amazing banana bread that I know you can.
Banana bread it is. Well, Martyna, I appreciate you being so generous with your time. Thank you for being on the podcast.
My
to
pleasure.
our listeners, I hope you pass down this episode to someone in your life who needs it. Thank you and goodbye.
Oh, great pleasure.